Hello, class, and welcome to the Week 14 Reading and Writing About Literature slash Essay 4 um review. I know we finished reading and writing about literature, and we had already read the section on literary and criticism and theory earlier in the semester, but we reread that last week so that we recognize how important it is to focus on the criticisms and theories for this paper. As we discussed last week, when you picked one of your issues for essay 3, depending on which issue you chose, you were already doing that a type of criticism. So let's bring it back real quick. For essay 1 on the story of an hour, if you focused on Mrs. Mallard as a woman, you were doing a gender criticism. If you looked at their marriage and the idea of love, um, well, those are part of culture, marriage and love. If you looked at what it was like for her to be not just as a woman, but as a woman at that time period, then you were kind of right focusing on milieu. You were kind of doing right a historical criticism as well as a gender criticism. And if you looked at what the character was thinking and feeling, that was also psychological. So they all blend together. When you bring in the outside sources, that's reader response, right? And when you analyze the elements of fiction, poetry, and plays, right? Plot, character, setting, style, symbolism, point of view, all of those, it's formalism. So you've already done formalist criticism for the most part. You've probably already done gender, cultural, and maybe even psychological. And when you bring in your outside sources, you did read a response. So the question herein lies, what do you want to write about? What do you want to focus on? You have freedom for this paper. Anything could be pretty much a cultural criticism. And remember, when you read the pages in this book under literary criticisms and theory, reading and writing about literature, pages 170 to 183, there's like 3 paragraphs on each criticism. The first paragraph it's just like when they give you the elements of fiction. There's 3 paragraphs under plot, 3 paragraphs, right? Usually the first paragraph tells you what it is, what kind of criticism it is. Second tells you how to do it. And the third gives you an example. So use those pages to help guide you as you're drafting your essays. Last thing I want to say about it, you don't need to say, I'm doing a cultural criticism. If you say, I'm writing about love, then you're doing a cultural criticism. If you say, I'm writing about these characters, then you're doing a psychological criticism when you mention their mindsets, their motives, right? Their desires, their actions, their development. The one that kind of trips people up a lot is Marxist. Marxist criticism is looking at power, money, class as major influential factors. So you don't have to say, I'm doing a Marxist criticism. You would just say, by analyzing the influence of money and class on characters, power in the plays, readers can better understand. Remember, too, you don't have to write about Shakespeare. You don't have to write about stuff we've read this semester. You can pick whatever fictional source or sources you want. Lastly, everything's fair game as long as you're analyzing words. Movies, comic strips, TV shows, things of that nature. You got a lot of freedom with this paper topic. Um, and I've gotten a lot of interesting papers over the years, right? As I've shared with you before. For those of you, right, that might be kind of, I'm not really sure what I want to write about, kind of like for the last paper, the go-to, right, the no-brainer, if you would, was identity. And for this one, I think maybe pick a psychological criticism and focus on identity, come up with a concept or an idea that you feel teaches us, right? Or that we learn about, excuse me, the story or the poem or the play teaches us, right? We learn about that concept, that idea, something about the human experience, life. You want to write about love, you want to write about revenge, you want to write about paranoia, you want to write about anxiety, right? Whatever interests you, you should be able to find some sort of fiction to use as the focal point while you make that idea, that concept, that cultural idea, that gender idea, that socioeconomic idea, that LGBTQIA concept or idea, that psychological concept or idea, the focal point of the essay. When you use the elements of fiction, poetry, and plays, When you analyze those, you're doing the formalist criticism. The easiest way to think about it is at no point in the semester did I ask you to say I'm doing a formalist criticism and list out the formal elements of fiction. I just asked you to focus on which elements of fiction you're going to write about. So at no point do you have to list out the criticism, just list out what elements of the criticism you're going to focus on, right? Readers can better understand gender identity by analyzing Hamlet and Macbeth. You don't have to say, I'm going to do a gender criticism of Hamlet and Macbeth. No. Readers can better understand the concept of gender identity by analyzing characters from Hamlet and Macbeth. Right? Things of that nature, okay? So hopefully everybody's feeling confident, and if not, give me a call. Remember, I'm happy to chat on the phone, and those of you that have called, we've talked out your paper topics, and I think it's been beneficial. Last thing I want to do here is review some format things. A lot of you have floating quotations. I've given you the page numbers. We've gone over it numerous times. Page 46 in Reading and Writing About Literature. If you just copy and paste a quote, you should not have a period ending the sentence before a quote. You should either set the quote up with your own words and blend it in, set it up with a signal phrase and a comma. The author states, comma, and then have the quote, or set it up with a complete sentence, 2 dots, a colon. The author makes a very interesting point, colon, and then have the quote. When you're bringing in quotes from your secondary sources, if you punctuated the sentence 1 of your précis correctly and the format's good, put a colon after it. Take sentence 1 from your précis, put a colon after it, and then have your quote. Make sure when you're block citing, right? So that's on 46, right? Block all the omitting words, using single quotes, ellipses, points. That's all on 48 and 49. We've gone over this. The two main things that people seem to be making mistakes wise are floating quotes, which it explains how to avoid on 46. I've just gone over, and MLA block format on 50, 51, and 52. Especially for those of you who are citing from Shakespeare. 4 or more lines have to be blocked. And luckily, on page 52, there's a specific example from Hamlet for MLA block format. It's right under the specific example of putting the slash and the space between 3 lines or less. Remember, the space before, space after the slash. Line 1, slash, space before, space after. Line 2, slash, line 3. If it's 4 or more, block it. See the excellent examples at the top of page 52. Make sure at the bottom of page 52 it reminds us, never assume a quote is self-explanatory. Always comment on them. In addition to setting up your quotes, citing them correctly, you also need to comment on them. Explain why the quote is significant or relevant. You should not be ending a paragraph with a quote unless it's really self-evident, right? Unless it really works. For the most part, you should be analyzing and explaining your quotes at the end of each paragraph. That being said, hopefully we're feeling good. Again, call if you have any questions. In-text format is covered on 151 to 154. In the parentheses, the author's last name. If it's a paragraph number, put a comma before it, PAR, period, in the paragraph number. If it's just a page, no punctuation. Chopin, space, 37, in the parentheses with the period. That's covered. Should be good about that. How to cite act, scene, and line numbers, how to cite paragraph number, how to cite page number. We've gone over it. There's examples. Hopefully you're feeling good. Works cited. For those of you who are having issues with the works cited format, please consult with page 155. Capital W, capital C, no colon after works cited, alphabetical order, hanging indent. Remember, for hanging indent, hit return at the end of every line and then tab every line after the first over. So you just see the first line flush with the margin, and then every line is hanging indent. It's the opposite of an indented paragraph. An indented paragraph is the first line is indented and then everything's flush. No, this one, the first line's flush and everything else is indented. Numerous examples in the book for how to cite print sources, electronic sources, etc. And then if you get a chance, take a look at, right, that's 155 and on. up until 161. And then if you get a chance on page 169, there's the sample works cited from the sample student essay. Within that sample student essay, there's numerous examples of MLA format, and the works cited works really well too. So there it is. Everybody should be feeling good about format. We've read this book, we've reviewed this book. Make sure if you made mistakes on essay 1 or essay 2 or even essay 3, you don't make the same mistakes on essay 4. I'll accept it up until the very last day, right, of the semester. However, if you turn it in on the last day, you're not going to have a chance to revise it. Remember, with the other essays, you turn them in. If you want to make changes, that's fine. But essay 4, make sure you avoid making the same mistakes if you made mistakes on the earlier essays, because you're not going to have as much time to revise it. I encourage all of you to send me a draft of the essay, as well as, right, your intro and your précis. Send me a draft. Get some feedback from me as you're working on it. If we were in the classroom, right, you'd be coming up one by one, and I'd be giving you feedback on your drafts. Okay, so you send me your draft, and you get your feedback from me. We're just doing the feedback online. So that being said, I hope this video finds you all well. Thank you for your patience. Stay tuned. Othello's up next. And remember, call if you want to chat about your essays, okay? Thanks for your patience.